Inspire with Nendrix, the foundation. Boy, this is my
Hello, Embracing Arms community. This is Dr. Danielle Harrison with Your Best Life, and I'm coming to you today with another amazing opportunity to meet a phenomenal scholar and leader in our state doing some phenomenal work. And, we have been interviewing individuals over the past year, engaging them in conversations about a variety of topics that has an impact on not only adults, but also children, and really trying to figure out some best practices to do better work with how we engage families. And this particular scholar is no stranger to working with youth, working in the education system. And I'm so excited to introduce her to you guys. This is Dr. Joaquina Kankam. And she is the director and senior consultant at School of Solutions. School of Solutions is a consultancy that specializes in youth protection. Dr. Kankam enjoys auditing and creating systems designed to protect both minors and organizations that provide programs for our minors. And so, once this session is over, you can always reach Dr. Kankam to come and engage your colleagues and your educators by reaching her at Joaquina, Joaquina, at the School of Solutions.com. And we'll have her contact information below. And so you can also visit her on LinkedIn and visit her website at schoolofsolutions.com. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Dr. Kankam. How are you today?
I am great. I'm so glad to be here and to be on this forum and platform. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I know we have been trying to schedule this for a while now. And so, we were like, okay, you know what? We have time on our schedule. We want to make this happen. So I'm so glad that you were able to stop by and engage our Embracing Arms community. So talk to me a little bit about School of Solutions and what's made you get into this work.
This is a very interesting question. As you know, Danielle and I have worked on several projects together, and we worked at a university where we conducted a lot of youth programs, especially over the summertime. And a lot of the times, almost every year and almost every program, there was always these issues. The last camp that I did, we caught two kids of about 13 or 14 of the same sex in bed together. And when I tried to report it to the powers that be, the answers, and I'm still getting the same answers because I'm not going to ever let it go, is, well, what we're doing is good enough. And I decided at that point that it was no longer good enough. It's not good enough for the children that are participating in the programs. It's not good enough for the organization. It's not good enough for the people that's responsible for the children to be placed in a situation like that. So with School of Solutions, what we do is we work to identify any unknown and uncontrolled risk associated with youth programming, not only to protect minors, but to protect the organizations and the organization's resources as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when you're saying the organizations, these are not only organizations like public schools, but also private schools, universities,
churches, county government offices, city officials, any sports or associations, any organization that offers or invites minors to participate in programming or activities. We work with those organizations to help them streamline their processes to make sure that all the kids that are there are safe and protected, and that the youth serving organization is protected as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this is in national and international organizations that you've been working with.
Yes, I've been working with organizations all over the country at this point, and I have been in contact with different entities outside of America as well, which I'm very surprised about.
Oh,
I didn't think that it was as big of an issue everywhere else, and it is.
yeah.
So,
Yes, and I have the pleasure of, as Dr. Kankam mentioned, we have a long history. We went through the doctoral journey together. We worked in the same organization, and we've been on many projects. So I've had an opportunity to be a fly on the wall, watching how you advocated for these systems and these processes to be in place. And that also inspired you when you were writing your dissertation. So talk to us a little bit about your dissertation and the tool that you designed to help these organizations.
oh God, I haven't talked about this thing since I graduated. Well, I did create and it was the smartest yet the dumbest thing I've ever done in my entire life because it took me forever to graduate. I developed and validated an instrument to measure the quality of pre-college outreach programs. And this looks at these 7 areas where if you have these areas and look at the things that fall within these different tenets, if you pretty much have these things in place, then we can say that you are operating at an effective level of programming. Mm-hmm. Now, the beauty of what I did for my dissertation and what I'm doing now is what I worked on was looking at all those things that need to be in place for pre-college outreach programming. However, what I'm doing now became a side project after pretty much I was ready to defend. I realized I didn't focus on the compliance and risk management part of pre-college outreach programming. Mm-hmm. So then I created a course called Auditing, Risk Management, and Reporting. And that's where I looked at colleges and universities all across the country. And 2 things became apparent. The first one was that there was not a standard anywhere in this country. No one was doing the same thing anywhere in this country when it comes to youth protection. Every single organization. And I looked at over 40, from Boys and Girls Clubs to universities, colleges, Girl Scouts of America, every type of youth servant organization I could look at, and no one had the same procedures in place. So that was the first thing. And the second thing that stuck out was there are 6 things that every youth organization should consider in order to have an effective youth protection program. Mm-hmm. And those 6 things are, I have a post on my wall: annual youth protection training, online reporting system, a youth protection policy, parent participant portal, an SOP manual, and data tracking. Mm-hmm. And what we do with Solar Solutions is look at what you have in place, and then we audit that to provide recommendations, and then teach you how to get your systems where they can provide a clear path of accountability for everyone involved. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's what my side project ended up being outside of my dissertation, which to me is kind of remarkable that it started off, it was one thing, mm-hmm. and then it led me down this path to something that's really necessary and needed for everybody.
Which is a beautiful bonus when you're doing your dissertation. It's so interesting because I'm always in awe of people who really dig deep and think deeply about what they're going to write about, what they're going to do with their dissertation. And for you were really adamant about, my dissertation is going to be my bread and butter. And like whatever it is, like, this is going to be my thing, and this is going to be needed, and folks from all over the world is going to be asking about it. And I was like, "Whoo, I just want to graduate. I can graduate," and so to reflect back on the work that you did to kind of create this tool, this effective tool to assess, like, where are we at and what things we need to be in place so that we can be, more compliant when we're talking about protecting youth. That's just amazing. And so I've been able to kind of follow you on LinkedIn, and almost every single day you post something in the news, some type of violation that had they had this youth protection system in place, this would have mitigated a lot of those issues. What do you think, what organizations or public or private do you believe are at the greatest risk when dealing with the issues of youth protection?
At this point, I think all of them are. And simply because of the way the law is structured, the law is created to protect. This is all the law does when it comes to youth servant organizations. The law requires youth servant organizations to require individuals working with minors to have a background check and to get participate in some type of mandatory reporter training, because if you're working with children, you're technically a mandatory reporter. All that does essentially is allow individuals without a criminal record, without any criminal charges or being, questioned by the police, to work with minors as long as they participate in some type of training that says, hey, you need to report abuse if you suspect it. And that's it. There's no other form of youth protection required by the federal or, in most cases, state governments that would help to protect these children when they're in the care, custody, and control of these youth serving organizations. So in my opinion, every single organization that operates, sponsors, or hosts programs and activities for minors, you're at risk. And the amount that people are paying out nowadays are hundreds of millions of dollars. And what insurance companies, in the past, people say, well, we have an insurance policy. The insurance will cover it. We don't have to worry about it. But guess what the insurance companies are doing now? They're saying, you know what? We can't cover anything that is illegal activity. And guess what? You're on your own when it comes to paying out these settlements and these awards. We're not going to pay them. And they've actually taken organizations to court and sue those organizations for the right to not to have to pay those policies out.
Wow.
So essentially, youth serving organizations, and this is for senior leadership at youth serving organizations, you're going to be held to the fire. Mm-hmm. And if your organization isn't a big one and has a big endowment and has a lot of resources, it's going to close your organization. It's going to shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's the words that I heard from the insurance companies that I've spoken with. It's going to shut you down. Wow. Simply because they're not going to cover your policy. They're not going to honor it. You're going to be stuck on your own, and you're not going to have enough resources to cover all the damages that need to be paid out. So I think it's everyone, every single organization.
So what do you think, with that being the case, that's a heavy load, and it looks like for your organization, it's a very unique organization, right? I don't know. I searched the internet, and I don't know any other organization that has a tool like yours, which, poses a good problem, because that means everyone needs to be coming to you so that they can have this assessment tool put in place in their organization. But what do you think really is the thing that causes these organizations to resist putting these systems in place in the first place?
Well, this is the way we've always done it, or we have someone who's responsible for it, which I don't even understand it either, senior leaders, because and I get it. We hire people who are experts in what they do, and we give them the autonomy to do their job. However, in the case with youth protection, when things go bad, as the spokesperson or the face of the organization, everything's going to be pointed in your direction. You're going to be the first to go behind it. And in some cases, you might even go to jail and face criminal charges if you don't do what's right. Not the people that you hire. You are. And so I feel like it's a lot of passing the buck. It's a lot of, this is how we've always done it. A lot of good enough is good enough. A lot of, a lack of awareness of how everything could play out at the end of the day, if you don't get ahead of it before things go bad. And I think a lot of times we are reactive instead of proactive. And that leaves us in a bind where we're then in the newspaper and all over the news. And the research says if a story is reported in the New York Times a certain number of times, you can guarantee a drop in enrollment for the next 2 years automatically. And I think it's just a lack of knowledge and a lack of awareness. And even though we're in education and we're doing these things to educate you, we feel often that once we've reached a certain level, we don't need to educate ourselves anymore. We don't need to read anymore. We don't need to know anymore. And that's what's going to hurt us the most.
Absolutely.
And I think those things,
Mhm.
you know, are our biggest issues when when trying to get people to really be receptive to doing something different. And when you're doing something new, I'm gonna just deviate for a second, but when you're doing something new, it's beautiful because nobody's like the little red hen.
Right.
You know, she asks people, yeah, hey, do you want to help me bake the bread? Nobody wanted to help her get the grain. Nobody wanted to help her mill it. Nobody wanted to help her, put the bread in the tins and the ovens. But when the bread started baking, everybody
Everybody
started
wants some of
coming around.
that.
And I feel like that's where we are right now. We are grinding out this wheat and making this grain. We are kneading the dough. And right now, people are kind of looking and peeping, but they really haven't started smelling this bread yet to see what's happening. And it can be discouraging, but at the same time, you cannot let it go because this is something so important that my nephew was at that camp when we caught those two boys in the bed. My nephew was down the hall.
Wow.
I can't let it go.
Right.
Because every time I think about it, two things happen. I either get sad or I get angry that the adults who were responsible for overseeing these children and making sure that they were safe didn't even care to come out their rooms when kids were running up and down the hallways, smashing food in each other's faces. And it makes me angry that I, as a woman, had to come in the boys' dorm to get things under control with a police officer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so for me, I can't let it go.
And I think that unfortunately, it took something like that to happen before folks start really paying attention just a little bit, even then, just a little bit, that there's an issue, and forgetting that, young people are exploring alternative lifestyle. So no longer can we say, we'll just room girls with girls and boys with boys. Like, we really still need to be paying attention to, their lifestyles and being on it, a little more. And I think this compliance system that you have in place will be able to drill down on those things and have these youth serving organizations make better decisions for it. But change is hard for we talk about change all the time, and how, that first step is identifying that sense of urgency, and going into these organizations like you have and showing them what that sense of urgency looked like. And those articles that you're posting on LinkedIn almost every day is enough to say, we need to have some change in place. And this is why it should be urgent, for your organization. So for the audience, when we're talking about youth, how do we define youth in this case? What would be that continuum?
And for youth serving organizations, and this is important, how we would define minors and youth: anyone who's not enrolled, and first of all, anyone who's not 18, who's not, and for a university, who's not enrolled into your university, because if they're enrolled, then they're student and you treat them totally different. But if they're just invited to participate, if they're participating in recruitment activities, then they would be considered minors. They would be considered youth. So these are people who are not students, unless this is a K through 12 situation where they are students.
Right.
Then it's different. But it varies from organization to organization. But when I talk to universities, I make it clear that we have to treat children that are under 18, 17 and under, who are not enrolled, differently from those who may be 17 and up who are enrolled.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a totally different scenario.
Absolutely. Well, that's good to know. We wanted to make sure that our listeners understand, like, when we talk about youth serving organization, we want you to know exactly what we mean when we say youth, and those organizations that are there to serve them, and that there are different policies in place depending on your enrollment status with that particular organization. So over the past 12 months, especially since COVID, because there's been a lot of stuff going on in these schools and these organizations, for centuries. But especially since COVID has hit and dynamics have changed, what do you think is one of the most egregious violations of youth protection that laws that you've seen in the past 12 months?
I don't know, but with COVID, and I'm in Texas, so this whole mask, you preventing mask mandates and nobody's wearing them. And then it just bothers me simply because there are some children who are still of school age, but not old enough to receive the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you cancel out the mask mandates, then you're exposing these younger children to become at risk to COVID-19. And yes, they may not have any symptoms at all, maybe asymptomatic, but then there are cases where there are young people who have passed away from it. So do we want to take a chance to say, maybe they get it, maybe they don't? So for me, it was COVID-19, and the approach to it has been very, to me, adult-centered and not youth-centered.
Right.
And I think it's really, really sad. I'm working with schools now, and certain schools have dozens of kids out every single day for quarantine purposes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you still have adults on those campuses without masks on. And you still have people who driving the buses who don't have masks on. And it's like, not only are you taking a chance of getting someone sick in the event that you're sick and not even aware of it, because the incubation period is 3 to 4 days.
Right.
But you are not even protecting yourself at this point, and there are children all around you who are sick. So
absolutely.
I just don't know. I'm just really discouraged by it all.
Yeah, and I know just recently, because my grandchildren are in Texas, and just recently, my 6-year-old one of my twin grandboys was sent home because he was COVID and positive. And when you have a set of twin grandboys and a 4-year-old granddaughter living under the same roof with their parents, how do you quarantine a 6-year-old from their brother and sister? And it's almost as if, like, my son just kind of resolved to the fact that we're all going to get it. I can't keep my son away from everyone. He's a 6-year-old. He needs to be, around us. And so what are they doing? What protections are they putting in place? What strategies are they putting in place to make sure that everyone is safe and that the adults are making the ultimate decision to just protect themselves? And I've seen adults push back on the policy. I'm not, you're not going to control my body. You're not going to tell me that I have to be tested. You're not going to tell me that I have to be vaccinated. And then they come to school, and then it's a vicious a cycle. And you're in a youth serving organization. And so these kids are exposed to your decision making. So I really appreciate, the work that you're doing with your tool to assess, those risks from every level, not just education and not just, activities, protecting them when they're engaging in activities, but their health, as well. And so I really appreciate the work that you've done designing that tool. You mentioned earlier, about criminal background checks and how that's just not enough to prevent violations or violations to youth protection laws, and that there's other layers of things that, need to be considered. How many times have you looked at cases where that was all they relied on, quantitatively?
That's a great question, because in 2020, a university had to pay out a settlement, I believe $1 million to a student's family, because a security officer at this particular college made his vehicle look like the campus's police vehicles. And he invited, one day this girl, or the student, needed a ride home. So once she got in the car was fitted with a cage on the inside and doors that could not open from the inside. So she was essentially locked in. He kidnapped her, and then he killed her. And all they did was, and the reason why they won the settlement was because they said that, along with everything else that took place, there was improper background check. It was an inadequate background check conducted. And that's basically all they did. said, okay, well, he doesn't have anything on his criminal record. Okay, well, he's good to go.
Right, right.
And this same person turned around, kidnapped and killed somebody because of the gaps in the risk management system. So my advice is to, number one, I don't know what type of background check they conducted, but you have to conduct the nationwide, state, county, full background check to make sure there's nothing there. And then in certain positions like security officers or positions where you know they'll be in direct contact with minors, that's when you need to do an intensive reference check. And I know my sister works in HR and she, works with a lot of staffing companies. And actually, her partner owns a staffing company. So I know there's a lot of laws and regulations that prevent people when hiring from asking certain questions. But there has got to be a way where you can probe an individual a little bit further with their behavior and what would they like? And it's I just posted on LinkedIn, another situation where a guy had sodomized and molested some kids at a daycare. Again, all they ran was a background check, and he had worked for another child care center before then, and they said, well, we didn't see anything. Wow. Well, he got to your organization and molested several kids there. I know this isn't the first time this happened.
Wow.
So it goes beyond just clearing the background check. We got to do the work, and we can't just say, okay, well, we check this box and we're done. We have to dig deeper. If not, you're going to be in the news and you're going to be sued. Yeah. You're not going to be able to avoid it.
And I know that, for the short-term impact of these youth service organization violating these youth protection laws is oftentimes being sued. You mentioned earlier a decrease in enrollment in some of those programs, loss of respect from the community, regarding the organization. What do you believe are some of the long-term impacts of these youth servicing organization violating these youth protection laws?
Yeah, you're asking the greatest questions today, because this is the part that nobody ever talks about. And the long term is, what happens when I'm a president of a university and I'm terminated from the university because of a public scandal? Nobody talks about this, but this is what happens. It not only affects their mental health, it not only affects their finances, it not only affects their relationships with their family and friends, but their family and friends go through depression and they have mental health. It affects their mental health as well, because this is so public. It's embarrassing. It's usually all of a sudden, you don't see it coming. So people are in disbelief. They are first angry and overly emotional. And then when it sets in that I've actually lost my job behind this public scandal, it sends them into a deep depression spiral that they have the hardest time getting out of, because they did not see it coming. Did not see this termination coming, and it's public. So that means it's in the newspaper, it's all over the news, everybody knows, and you are ashamed to go outside your house, you are ashamed to talk to people, your family is ashamed, and all of these, and your finances and resources are affected. All of these things are happening all at once behind one public scandal.
Wow.
And nobody talks about how it affects those at the top that gets terminated. The saddest part about it is the people that probably created these policies and the ones that's really responsible, they still have their jobs. They're still there. Exactly. But it's the president, it's the senior leadership who's going to lose their credibility and their position and their job and their livelihood behind a decision that someone else made.
Wow. And you heard it here first. Embracing Arms community. There are some short-term and some devastating long-term impacts on these youth protection laws being violated by these youth servicing organization, and not just the impact of as the individual leader from the organization, but the people who they care about, the people associated with them, can also suffer long-term impact because of the embarrassment, because of the scandal, and just the overall impact on their mental health. So, if you guys are a part of a youth servicing organization, if you do not have a system in place to address some of the issues that Dr. Kankam was talking about today, you need to get in contact with Dr. Kankam today. Either visit her website at schoolofsolutions.com, or again, visit her through LinkedIn, and you can email her at Joaquina, Joaquina, at schoolofsolutions.com. All of her contact information, you should see it at the bottom of this screen. Dr. Joaquina, do you have any last minute things that you want to share with the community?
No, just if you have something on your heart and you feel passionate about it, and it's even if it doesn't seem like it's working out initially, just know the universe wouldn't have given it to you if you wasn't meant to do something with it. And I feel like the universe gave me this and put me in those situations because the universe knows that I'm not going to let it go. I'm like a dog with a bone when it comes to things like this. I'm never, and I told this to the system when I talked to them a couple of months ago, I'm never going to let this go. I'm never going to let this slide because it's very personal to me. Even when my nephew talks about it now, I still get angry and my feelings are still hurt about it. I'm never going to let it go. So if you have something on your heart that you feel like is an injustice or something that's been done wrong, even if you're trying to work on it and it's not working out, don't let it go. It was given to you for a reason. Work it, figure it out, keep at it until it becomes something, because it was given to you for you to handle it for a reason.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for your message. Thank you for joining us and engaging in the dialogue. Yes, we're excited, and hopefully you'll be able to come back and join us again and share some more of your expertise with our community. And for those of you who are logged in or will be watching this later, we want to thank you for giving us your time on this Saturday. Please remember to go out in the community and embrace someone. They're waiting on you, and continue to live your absolute best life. Thank you, guys.
Inspire with Nendrix, the foundation. My Lacasa boy, this is my residence. My prescription boy, this is my medicine. The world can be sickening, living in house resemblance. Not to mention the media's effort to keep us in the most simplistic state of mind. Lowest age bracket committing the highest rate of crime. People dying way before they hit their age of prime, thinking success only happens if they shoot hoops.